What would your gut feeling would have said to you to do if you take yourself away from that forest? No, seriously, what would the gut feeling would have asked you to do if you took yourself away from the situation?
Just speak from your heart.
You see, you went back, and that's exactly what happened at the end. And many of us, that's exactly what I'm going to cover today also. Many of us are not listening to the inside. We prepared a certain path, but yeah, things going to happen. Murphy's Law is always in the path. So what we do is we go inside. And yesterday I covered a topic on synchronicity where we spoke heavily on unconscious connections. And unfortunately, many do not tap that. Many do not tap that. We touched heavy on mindful considerations, areas that we could get into. Today, we talk on this unconscious tapping. Junk puts it very bluntly. He said to get your synchronicity, unless you have the interplay within yourself connected to the external world, it never works. And the answer inside. So when you ultimately you ended up going inside to get the solution. And this is exactly what he says. We need to be unconsciously connecting constantly. And that does not come without practice. Many do not hear that. They think affirmations and visualization is all we do. You need to learn. Remember, I used to always say, and I still do, make this your best friend. John used to tell me, make your subconscious your best ally and tap on the shoulder. And that's exactly what Junk is also talking about. But in a different way. He talks about it in a psychological way. But I'm saying, that's the first question I asked myself. Why didn't I go inside? Why didn't I go with my gut feeling? And 99.9% of the time, it always is the case. So when I recognize that, and I recognize the patterns that I need, and all these patterns are there. I mean, we have touched the tip of the iceberg in, releasing quite a few of the patterns to you. But the key element is for us to be synchronized, we need to have that pathway opened. And you've heard me say also, flow like water. And the flow of water bypasses filters, bypasses boulders. It just flows in a peaceful, serene way. Now, when we keep that, you understand how much you are in control, not the situation being in control of you. For example, when I consider the situation, I consider the situation of number one, many of us, was a victim of that. Many of us have this concern about self-belief, consideration, I can't do this. Why is this happening to me? The self-doubt, all of those type of, I use the word very bluntly, garbage that's poured onto us. And you know something? That's when the intuition, that's when your subconscious directs you. And how many a time, do anybody still visit bookshops?
Yes.
There's physical bookshops that you go and you browse and hand touch books. I'm a constant doer of that. And whenever for some reason, whenever I go into the self-help category, I remember the first trip I went into India, there was only one row of self-help. Within 5 years, there were, one shelf of self-help. Within 5 years, there were 5 rows of self-help books. And that shows the growth of it. Now, what interestingly happens is, if you have so much a trust with this thing in here, you seem to be directed towards those type of books. They come to your forefront. And so I flick through the back and I flick through the front and I just skim through it. And just in the bookshelf itself, sometimes an hour, 2 hours I spend in it. In the bookshelf, it's the bookshop itself, I find solutions on these snippets of issues. Now, Many would say, yeah, okay, and follow. But those snippets are actually triggers for you to now deep dive. How many do that? How many really do that? So any visit to the bookshop comes back with 4 or 5 books, and most of them are related to one of those 2 issues that I carry, and I want to unravel them. So that in itself is an indirect way of my validating to me that I need to shift from that to another. And when I can conquer a small segment of that concern of self-belief or whatever the issue is, I then have an anchor and an encouragement to do a lot more on that. So what was my trigger? The unconscious state from the inside of me directed me. I go to bookshops regularly. Yes, I go to book reading clubs regularly. I go and I have coffee with a lot of my friends who are actually on the same plane with me. I go out for coffee. Now, when that happens, these triggers actually come to me. And what I do with them is it's an indirect sign that I need to do something about it. So that is one way of tapping to get this unconscious state into you. They call it the unconscious connection. The second most valid thing, and most of us take it for granted, is to go out and source people that can help you. Therefore, you go out searching for role models that can help you. One of the key areas that we can do that from to tap this unconscious connection is to create a support structure. And that's what initiated my move some 20 years ago with Ramco Systems. When I was seeing those guys were hanging out and talking with their own friends of the same level, and they were not empowering and improving themselves, I created communities for them, not just amongst their peers, but with their superiors and with cross company peers, which means there was a different type of input coming into them. And those type of support structures were what I call communities. So I created that in companies for them to enrich themselves. Now, that's a stem off here with MRM in a very subtle way. And this community, for example, not just I want to promote MRM, but this community in itself has got a wealth of resource knowledge that people are not tapping properly, not what we're running in a structured manner. In addition to that, for issues that you have, the connectivity amongst people. So how many are actually going out of the way to get to know one another in the group? Now, that support structure is a very powerful mechanism to help enrich that flow for you. Yes, I have self-doubt. Yes, I have issues in relation to belief factor. Yes, I want to improve, but I'm not prepared to go to the bookshop. I'm not prepared to listen to the inside when there is something inside of me that says, hey, go talk to this person. And what happens is they don't have the skills to talk. Therefore, the communication gets broken down. Many approach it from a very situational case where they want only for themselves. They don't understand the give and take philosophy. So the second means in which this subconscious, unconscious connection happens is in support structures. First is not just bookshops, it's situational group meetings, group environments. And the last, obviously, is how many of us actually sit in silence. And I mean total silence, without any movement, without any interruption, and go deep, deep, deep. And I tell you one thing I learned, and I learned this way back when I was playing the stock market a lot, because my father was a heavy stock market player. And we had 3 or 4 top stockies, I call them. One in Malaysia, Mr. Tan. And every time when I went back to KL, Dad used to take us out for lunch, and he would, it's not insider information. He'd just say to us, are you listening? Are you really listening to this? Are you listening to the trends? Are you listening to this? And I used to always wonder what he was referring to. Until I came back to Australia, and there was one stockbroker in Sydney who would do all of his analysis work between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning when he's in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet. Total silence. And he then thinks why things are happening in the world, why things are here, why things are there. And then he navigates his stock information out to his clients based on supply and demand. What did Steve Jobs do on the first time when he went back and got into the company that kicked him out? When he came back from Next, the first thing that Steve Jobs did was stop all projects. And he told all of his employees, all of the ones behind the desk developers, and he said, just go out to the market and see which shelves are empty and come back. That's the agenda he gave his team. Now you begin to wonder, what the hell is this guy talking about? Wisdom that he got to understand the need from a supply-demand situation. So if you know in yourself what you are there for and what you're going to provide to people, you then turn around and deep dive into it. But how many of us do that? How many of us deep dive into our unconscious state and surrender to it to such an extent that we then emerge out with solutions? That's the power of your conscious thought flowing into silence and meditation to give you the outcomes you want. So those are 3 examples in which, having this unconscious connection is such a powerful tool, but that will fade away if you do not practice it daily. So even sitting in silence is a practice, and we have to do it consciously. That will trigger patterns, that will trigger situations, that will trigger things within us that we know is not correct. And in a lot of cases, let me just illustrate this. And I used to tell this to a lot of participants who come, they will be sitting there and I might be talking on a pattern or a talk on a particular practice. And it, to a lot of cases, is bounces. Okay, it's bounces. So I tell them very bluntly, I say, don't worry if you don't understand this now. I'm not talking to you. They look at me. I say, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to your subconscious mind. And I guarantee you, you watch me. One day you're riding on your bike going to the beach, or you're riding and going to Globe, what do they call them? Globe Silk store, something like that in Chennai, one of the big department stores. And you are in that department store and you want to buy a jacket, or you want to buy a shirt or whatever. And all of a sudden, while you're in the midst of it, an idea comes to you. And that relates back to what we were talking about. Now, that is no coincidence. That is what we're talking about, the synchronicity. Now, if you're consciously aware of that and you've deep dived into it, this is what comes. But you have to be in the state. Many are not. And that only happens with practice. Some can't sit still for more than 5 minutes. We can see them even on the screen when they're seeing and doing things with you. And that's what we're saying. Stillness is such a powerful asset. Those who have used it, have mastered it, are actually champions in their field. What's the price for it? Very little. Any experiences on one of these, any of these illustrations I've just shared with you? Any experiences from yourself?
And David, one more thing I want to share is that it's very easy, like the people who told me later on that, why didn't you start your story immediately?
Hindsight
Like,
is a good solution.
yeah, retrospectively, I thought, yeah, it was a very good question. But then at that moment, to get over that stress which is going on in your life,
Mm,
you got to it takes some time, and only so that's what I'm saying, that when we are habituated to going on stage, we got to be prepared, like what you're
yes.
saying, that if I would have just sat down, closed my eyes, taken a deep breath instead of going on the stage immediately, I would have got that idea. Maybe I would have got it. Instead of that, I was trying to download the song, which was wrong. And hindsight, why didn't you start your speech immediately? That's very easy for them to say, but I'm saying still I started my speech, whatever time I started my speech.
Yeah. The point is we need to learn to trigger to go inside us, have enough faith that we have the solution. That's where I'm coming from.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And the
And
only thing we can do at that moment is just look at a breath. If we can just
huh,
close our eyes, just we can
yes,
close our eyes and just go within. And like you said, just surrender. Like whatever is going to happen is happen for the best. And the ideas will come and they come. For me, it came a bit late because I was not focusing on the solution. I was focusing
yeah,
on the problem. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? It's my fault. I should have done like that. I should have done like that. And then the solution came when I just stopped thinking about that.
yeah. You see, and the interesting thing is the solution did come. And what I'm saying, and this is something we have to learn. I keep saying, what gets measured gets done. So the time gap, if I can reduce the time gap for that
Yes.
to come back to me faster the next time round, and reduce it further to come back faster the next time round, and then it comes instantaneously. This is exactly what John Grinder was trying to teach me. And
Yes.
I never understood. I used to ask him, John, how in the hell do you get all these things instantaneously? And he laughed and he said, I'm in my subconscious state constantly, 24/7. Never understood it. You understand? And this is the power. Walking, talking, unconscious state, and still be in the present moment is a
Yeah.
different gameplay.
And I feel it's good that it happened to me here rather than happening on the international stage.
Yeah,
Now I know
very
what
true.
I'm going to do over there. I will be
Yeah,
prepared with my speech, whatever happens, no matter my
yeah.
slides go wrong, no matter the light goes off, no matter what happens. I will be prepared now with my speech, whatever I have to say without anything.
Mm.
So it's
And
good.
and and you remember once before, about 4 weeks ago, I spoke about contingency plan. You remember
Yes.
that? Have two, three, four, and this is what happens. You see, when you have this situation, Alka, and then you had the other one that you did the preparation for,
Yeah.
4 weeks ago
Yeah.
or something like that. Okay, so the scenarios are, you learn from each one of that. So I have plan one, plan two, plan three. By the time I build it, so when you look at when I'm talking now, I've got all of the exposure that I did with participants and students. I mean, thousands of these programs that they're second nature to me. So all of
Yeah.
these things have been parked in there. Do you get what I'm saying? And so even yesterday, for example, the demo, that illustration, the list, and I did one method of it. Then I quickly flipped it into a second method. Now there are two, three, four of those you can make. Now the point is, unless you're in that zone and you've been practicing it that many times, you will not be able to flip and flap. You lose it. That's what this practice comes into play. Many cannot understand this principle. Any other questions? Any other exposure, experiences? Fauzia, tell me, please.
Hi, happy morning to all.
Happy morning.
Uh, yeah, I do experience these things, but I could now think that it happens only when I am in a good state. Means when I'm counseling someone or the point I try to prove, the stories, the incidents comes automatically to my mind, which I never planned to say to them. But it is so appropriate to their situation that creates shifts in them. So I feel so the moment I told those things to them, I know that my message get conveyed. And I realized this, it has come somewhere I don't know. Means something which I have not planned to discuss, but it comes so automatically, and I decide to say it out. And it always makes a shift in another person. So I could now relate it back that it happens because of this good state.
Hmm.
It never, it will always happen. It happens only when I'm in good state.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good as long now at least you're aware of it. That's the key thing. The awareness is the key factor. And then in the next coming weeks, I want to deep dive on this awareness factor, because many think, okay, I'm doing self-awareness, but they're not. They think by just deep diving and doing a bit of introspection is at the superficial level is where they go. They're not. We'll cover that in time. That's great, Fauzia. Fantastic. Yeah, sorry, Anita, you had your hands up.
Yeah. Yeah. So good morning, David. Like
Happy.
like you had the question for John Grennan. How does this work? How to tap into it? That is what you said already that silence is one thing that we need to practice to tap into it. But sometimes I feel that whenever I sit in silence, now there are so many thoughts that keeps coming one by one. And if I try to go that okay, stop coming, I want to just sit in silence, no thoughts, I don't want them to come, then the more they start coming. So
I'm going to
when I
ask
try
you.
to control तब तो और ज्यादा आते हैं.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest the solution is easily found. Prakash, you got the answer for that?
Yeah, gatekeeper. You need to alert the gatekeeper inside you. So once you have him in place, he would take care of everything. That too through practice. Thank you.
Alert the
Everybody has the
gatekeeper.
power within. Everybody has the power within. But we need to learn these things. They only come. And that's one of the modalities that's been released on this platform. But you'll get to know that in time. Don't get too perturbed. Gatekeeper is one. Another one is NENN. There's a string of these things. And you're wondering
Who is the
why, what
gatekeeper?
are
Our
these
mind?
guys talking?
Who is the gatekeeper? Our mind?
That's a lesson in its own. Yeah, it's somebody that you live in an apartment complex.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Before you get into the apartment, there's somebody there watching your property, right? The gatekeeper.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you got to structure that same way in your mind. You got 60,000 thoughts coming in a day. How are you going to control it? That's why you got so many flooding in and out. So to have the gatekeeper, somebody that'll stand there and guard, preferably a Gurkha Sikh turbaned man with a gun standing there, waiting to fire at all the thoughts that are coming in that you don't want and get rid of them. It's in the system. We will cover that in time slowly. It's a segment of its own, and there's practices to do with it. But in principle, that's what it is.